Hurricane Sally is virtually stalled south of the Mississippi Delta. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on Hurricane Sally as of 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central on this Tuesday morning. The center of Sally was at 29.1 north, 88.2 west. Winds are 85 miles per hour, although to be honest with you, that could be a little generous. Sally could be a little weaker than that. It's drifting northwest at 2. It's barely moving. I'll show you that in the radar in a second. But we do have hurricane warnings in effect from east of Bay St. Louis to Navarre, Florida. And we also have a tropical storm warning in effect east of Navarre to Indian Pass and west of Bay St. Louis to Grand Isle. And you can see the tropical storm force winds, the extent of them, are now starting to impact areas there along the coastline of the Gulf of Mexico. Again, the track is straightforward. It is expected to drift north, maybe even north-northeast, and right now a landfall near Mobile Bay seems quite possible with Sally. So it's a very serious flooding and surge threat, especially with that slow motion. Now here's the visible satellite imagery. As the sun comes up, you can see not too shabby. I mean, it's obviously not rapidly strengthening, thankfully. Doesn't look like it's going to be a major hurricane, but a Category 1, it could potentially become a Category 2 again before landfall, somewhere between 80 and 100 miles an hour when it makes landfall here, probably in the general vicinity of Mobile Bay, Dauphin Island, maybe Pascagoula, Mississippi, Biola Battery, Alabama. Those areas there are really, really under the gun from a landfall from Sally, but it's not really the eye that we're worried about. It's this persistent moisture and the flow around the hurricane causing storm surge and heavy rainfall. We do have a NOAA aircraft that's flying in there right now, one of the NOAA aircraft called Miss Piggy, and Miss Piggy's flying out there and seeing that it is a Category 1 hurricane. So hopefully if it keeps sitting over the same water, it's going to upwell and cool the waters underneath it. Not freezing cold, but cold enough to not really get that high-octane fuel that a hurricane needs to strengthen. Nevertheless, you can see it does appear to be pretty stationary there right near the Mississippi Delta. Here's the radar out of Mobile, and you can see obviously the center of the hurricane ragged, but trying to organize a little bit. It's better on its southern side than it was yesterday, but it's also closer to the radar range. And you can see this persistent flow of moisture here right along the Gulf Coast. That's going to get worse and worse as the winds increase. But again, northwest at 2 miles an hour, that is a crawl. So we are not expecting landfall for probably 24 hours. With even as close as Sally is to the coast, it's just not moving quick enough to do that. And you can see some of the computer models here, the hurricane models, the HMON, this is the 6Z model, has Sally making landfall in about, what is that, about 18 to 24 hours as an 85 mile an hour Category 1. The HWRF model brings it ashore as a 100 mile per hour Category 2 in 24 hours. And that model brings it ashore right near areas of Biola Battery, Alabama, and maybe, I don't know, areas near the border. The hurricane model, HMON, brings it straight up Mobile Bay. So again, if you live in Mobile, if you live in Dauphin Island, if you live in Pascagoula, even Biloxi, you guys need to be making that preparation for a landfall from Sally. The water rise is the big threat. You can see the surge map. Not quite as high as we were talking about yesterday. Remember, we were thinking yesterday a high-end Category 2, maybe even a Category 3 hurricane. A Category 1, there's a big difference between that. Still, 4 to 7 feet here in Mobile Bay, 3 to 5 feet over by Pensacola and Destin, to say nothing of the Big Bend of Florida and areas here from the mouth of the Mississippi to Grand Isle. You guys could have water rises. We've already seen flooding. We've already seen flooding in areas here of Alabama and Mississippi along the coastline. This area, as you know, is very susceptible to water rises, and when you have a hurricane stalled off the coast, that's only going to prolong the agony. We also have the threat of heavy rain. You can see 15 to 20 inches. Obviously, you saw that radar. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And so over the next 3 days, this rain will eventually spread on up. But again, that line I just drew, that's 3 days. And so if you're in Alabama and Georgia, prepare for a very soggy week. You can see the highest flood threat is going to be from, let's say, the Pensacola region on over to Pascagoula, Biloxi, right there. So the Alabama coastline and portions of Mississippi and the Florida Panhandle have the highest flood risk. But again, that's going to extend all the way into Georgia and even South Carolina over the next 3 days. So a lot of heavy rainfall, and this will continue all the way through Friday. So up until the weekend, we're going to deal with Sally's moisture. Not only rain, but the threat of severe weather and tornadoes. We have this tornado watch. This is until 7 p.m. Eastern tonight, 6 p.m. Central. You can see there's the center of Sally right to the east of Boothville, Louisiana. And as Sally has these outer bands, you will likely see severe weather and tornadoes spin up. So be very, very careful for severe weather in mobile homes, not just low-lying areas where you could get flooding, but even inland where the severe weather can hit you. The key messages for Hurricane Sally this morning. Number 1, life-threatening surge is expected from the mouth of the Mississippi River to the Okaloosa-Walton County line in the panhandle of Florida. And the highest inundation is expected in Alabama, including Mobile Bay. Okay? Number 2, historic life-threatening flash flooding is likely through Wednesday along and just inland of the coast from the western panhandle to Mississippi. And that's widespread to major river flooding along the Gulf Coast, significant flash and urban flooding, and even minor and moderate flooding all the way into northern Georgia and the western Carolinas through the week. Again, a slow-moving hurricane creates historic flood events. And number 3, hurricane conditions expected today within that hurricane warning area in the Mississippi and Alabama coastlines and even western Florida panhandle. So again, a dangerous hurricane. The biggest threat from it is the water, not the wind, but still, a hurricane still sitting almost stationary there off the coastlines of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, headed for a likely landfall in the general direction of Dauphin Island and Mobile Bay. But again, the panhandle all the way back to Mississippi, you guys are in for a very big flood threat and a nasty week from slow-moving Hurricane Sally. I'm Mike Naso with the latest update on Hurricane Sally. I'll talk to you guys later.